Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity is away. In his place today, we're happy to have Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He is now contributing editor at National Review Online. He's a Fox News contributor and the author of many excellent books, which you can find Amazon and a bunch of other places. Andy, always good to have you back.
Greg, great to be here.
Well, let's get into a number of issues today, at least two of which will rest heavily on your legal expertise. A little bit later, we're going to be looking at the ongoing far-left fascination with the murderer Luigi Mangione and CNN's really coddling of that opinion. We'll also take a look at the very disturbing political violence aimed at the governor of Pennsylvania over the weekend. But we start on an issue related to the Trump immigration policy. And this news comes to us specifically from NBC, but everybody's reporting on it because this was on Friday. An immigration judge ruled that the Trump administration can deport Columbia University graduate student Mahmoud Khalil, a decision that comes a month after his arrest prompted national outrage and marked the start of the federal government's broader crackdown on foreign students. The Louisiana judge affirmed the Trump administration's argument that Khalil's beliefs threaten national security and justify his deportation. Quote, "The court will sustain charge of removability," Judge Jamie Comins said. Khalil, who is 30, has until April 23rd to file for relief and can remain in the United States until then. A federal judge in New Jersey has temporarily barred Khalil's deportation while he fights a similar challenge there. So, Andy, you've written about this. The fight basically boils down to his defenders saying, hey, he's in this country legally. He's got every First Amendment protection of free speech that everybody else has. His detractors and those who want to remove him from the country say, look, you're not a citizen. That matters. Yes, you're here legally, but that comes with the responsibility to behave. You're out there calling for the end of Western civilization, demonizing not only Israel, but fomenting anti-Semitism on campus and so forth. So what do you make of this decision, and how do you think this is going to play out?
Greg, it strikes me as you were describing that we're actually going to be symmetrical today in the sense that a lot of the law that we're now going to discuss that pertains to Mahmoud Khalil's case arises out of the Cold War and the crackdown by the government on the radical left, which led, of course, to some of the violence that we see reemergent and that we'll probably talk about later in the broadcast. And what we're dealing with here is a kind of a vestige of the Cold War. A vestige, I guess the left would prefer to call the Red Scare, because it's sort of a anti-communism reaction and then counter-reaction. In the Cold War, it became part of American statutory law that the Secretary of State could remove people from the United States who were aliens, regardless of what class of alienage we were talking about, if their presence in the United States either promoted communism or totalitarian movements, or if in the judgment of the secretary, who was the component of the government, of the executive branch specifically, who is best positioned to make this assessment, if the person's presence and activity in the United States had detrimental ramifications for American foreign policy interests. That law is still on the books. It's never been repealed. It's probably important, given your introduction to this, to clarify for our listeners that the judge who made this order in Louisiana, I think these proceedings are taking place, that the Trump administration is moving people, including legal aliens, who it arrests in this initiative. They're rapidly moving them out of the jurisdictions they are picked up in, and they're jetting them down to Texas and then to Louisiana, because obviously, while they're complaining about the defense lawyers forum shopping, in some cases, the Justice Department is forum shopping because it would much rather litigate in Louisiana and the Fifth Circuit, which is very Trump-friendly territory, versus, say, Massachusetts and New York and Virginia, which would be the First, the Second, and the Fourth Circuits, which are not nearly as Trump accommodating. So the immigration judge who made this decision is not a judicial official. The immigration court is a component of the Justice Department. So the reason we have things going on in two tracks here is the disposition of aliens is basically, when I say that, I mean who gets to stay in this country and who has to leave, is a function committed by the Constitution to the political branches. And Congress has delegated most of the authority to the executive branch, which the Supreme Court has recognized again and again, as recently as, I think, a 2020 case called Trump versus Hawaii. But many times in our law, going back to the Cold War, the courts have recognized the executive has extensive authority here. And the court has very little to say because, as you pointed out, we're not dealing with American citizens. We're dealing with aliens. And contrary to what the apologists for the aliens say, it does make a difference whether you're an American citizen or not. If you are an American citizen, the government works for you in this country, even though it doesn't seem that way a lot of the time. But if you're an alien, you're a guest in this country. And even if you're a lawful permanent resident alien, a green card holder like Mahmoud Khalil is, you are still a guest in this country. You're not an American citizen, even though our law in various sectors of it, like, for example, tax law and securities law, regards lawful permanent residents as what they call U.S. persons. So their rights are almost on a par with citizens, but there's still a significant distinction. And if you're an alien and you engage in criminal activity, if you engage in terrorism activity, if you are associated with the Communist Party or totalitarian parties, or if the Secretary of State decides that your presence here and your activities here are detrimental to U.S. foreign policy, you can be removed. And you can be removed even if the activities, and we're talking mainly here about speech and association, even if those activities would be legal if they were engaged in by an American citizen who has full-fledged First Amendment protections. We don't extend those protections as fully to even lawful permanent resident aliens. So you can be removed, and that's what the judge found last week.
No, that's a significant finding. And like we said, there's two tracks here, so we'll see where it goes from here. There's other cases that we'll be talking about later in the week. I always get a kick out of the left saying, it's a little used provision. A little used. Yes. Is it a law or not? I mean, so it's just fun to watch them spin this whole thing. You know?
Can I say, I love that you brought that out because, you know, long ago and far away, in ancient times and centuries past, I prosecuted terrorists in the 1990s under a statute that is known as the seditious conspiracy statute, which we heard a little bit about in connection with the January 6 riots. But back when I used it, it had only been invoked, 5-6 times in the history. It's a Civil War era provision that that was put in order to give the government, the Union government, more opportunity to prosecute Confederate sympathizers in Union states. That was the reason for it, and it had only been invoked, a handful of times. So when we used it against terrorists, and which we did because it was a perfect fit, it's a statute that makes it a crime to conspire to wage war against the United States and attack the government by force. What the left used to say is this little used provision. And I'd come back and say, yeah, it's a little unusual for people to make war on the United States. It's like one of those things that just doesn't come up all that often. But, every now and then a skyscraper gets bombed and we got to do something about it,
Yes, excellent, excellent point. Yeah, my sympathy runs over for the blind sheikh and his ilk. So, congratulations for using the law as it was supposed to be done, and congratulations especially on the convictions. But yes, the way that they'll spin when they don't like what's happening is just absolutely ridiculous. So, there is a growing expense eating into your company's profits. You know what it is? It's your cloud computing bill. You may have gotten a good deal to start with your current contract, current provider, but now the spend is sky high and increasing every year. But what if you could cut your cloud bill in half and improve performance at the same time? Well, if you act by May 31st, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure can help you do just that. Cut your cloud bill in half by moving to OCI by May 31st by visiting oracle.com/martini. Why do you want to use OCI? Well, OCI is the next generation cloud designed for everyday workload, where you can run any application, including many AI projects, faster and more securely for less. The savings are real. On average, OCI really does cost 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Join Modal, Skydance Animation, and today's innovative AI tech companies who have upgraded to OCI and saved. Plus, it has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds. This offer will end, though, May 31st, only for new U.S. customers with a minimum financial commitment. See if you qualify for half off at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. All right, Andy, on to our second martini now. Definitely a bad martini. And on New Year's Day, Jim and I did our predictions from very likely to moderately likely to not likely at all. And his, which kind of sort of came true on New Year's Day, which was eerie, was domestic terrorism. That one in New Orleans especially seemed to have more of a radical Islam tint to it. But his concern was that there was going to be domestic terrorism based on opposition to Trump, or just based on people getting more and more fanatical about their politics. And unfortunately, we saw evidence of that over the weekend in Pennsylvania. New York Post with the story, but I'm sure most people have seen it now. Pennsylvania State Police have arrested a Harrisburg man for the arson attack on Governor Josh Shapiro and his family that sent them fleeing from the governor's residence on the first night of Passover. They arrested this guy, Cody Balmer, who's 38 years old, expected to face charges of attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault against an enumerated person. Not surprisingly, when your family is under attack like that, Josh Shapiro, very, very upset. Here's a little bit of what he said yesterday.
We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this. And we have a responsibility to all be better.
Well, he's absolutely right, of course. It's good to see the DOJ and the FBI saying they're absolutely ready to cooperate with everybody in Pennsylvania to make sure that justice is certainly done here and to certainly try and deter other people acting like this. There was a story also about a teenager in Wisconsin who killed his mom and stepfather to inherit their money so he could finance a plot to kill President Trump. But if you've seen these pictures inside the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, the ceremonial rooms, the places where they do a lot of receptions there, absolutely gutted by the fire. We'll see what the motivation is. It doesn't particularly matter. Was it anti-Semitic due to the fact that it was Passover? Is it somebody who's upset with his policies? We don't know. I think the longer that we don't know the motive, people are going to be speculating. So the sooner we can get some answers on that will be good. But Andy, people have invested way too much in politics, and there's a lot of unstable people out there who unfortunately will do stuff like this.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I hesitate, Greg, to attribute political motivations to Governor Shapiro when he's obviously righteously angry for personal reasons and concerned about his family. But the political component of this is important, whether it's comfortable to speak about or not. And I think what Governor Shapiro is doing in many ways is trying to make the Democratic Party saleable again for the American people, because I think a large part of the reason we have a Trump administration now, notwithstanding that was a very, very close election, despite what the president continues to say about, winning by millions and millions of votes. He won by about 1.5 million votes, and it was pretty slim. But I think the big problem the Democrats have is that Biden got elected because he got the nomination and got elected because he convinced people that he could stand up to the radical left part of the Democrats' base. And then he ran his government by essentially ceding influence and control over to those elements in many ways. And it's driven the Democrats' popularity way, way down. And I think Shapiro, sadly, was not chosen to be vice president, even though he was obviously the best candidate that the Democrats could have offered for that position. And given the importance of Pennsylvania and the thinness of the result, who knows if it would have made a difference had he been chosen or not. But the reason he wasn't chosen is because in what we hope is a sliver of the Democratic base, although I think there's reason to think that it's much more robust than that, there is rampant anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and there is an infatuation, which we'll talk about some more, with political violence. If you don't want to say that they're all infatuated with it, they're at least willing to turn a blind eye to it, so that in a lot of elements of today's Democratic Party, Hamas is much more sympathetic than Josh Shapiro is, which means you have a big problem if that's where you're coming from. So I think Shapiro's a formidable person. He's a kind of a throwback to Democrats of the of the third way, sort of Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, thinking of the 90s, Joe Lieberman being another person who comes to mind. Democrats who were left of center on social issues and economic issues, but who were very strong on American national security and unapologetically pro-Israel. I happen to think that's the Democratic Party that, if they were to go back to it, the Republicans better strap in, because that would be a very formidable party to take on. The question is, does that Democratic Party still exist? We do a lot of talking, and I know Jim and you and Jim do a lot of talking about the state of the Republican Party and the internal tensions between, Reagan Republicanism and Trump populism. That is a fissure that we see day after day after day in the coverage. But I think something just as dynamic is going on in Democratic politics. We're seeing a continuing strain between the Democrats of yore, who I think Shapiro ably represents, and the Democrats. If they're not the majority of the party, they're certainly the energy of the party. And what we're seeing who knows? We'll see what this guy's motivations were. We'll see what the investigation yields. But you have to be concerned that it's inspired by anti-Semitism. This has been a problem in this country. It's been a pronounced problem since October 7th, but it's been a thrumming problem in Democratic politics for a very long time now.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And the fact that it was the first night of Passover will certainly be something that I hope will be investigated. And you look at the poll numbers of young people, especially on the left, and their sympathy, in some cases, towards Hamas, but certainly antipathy towards Israel, very, very disturbing. So, but the fascination with other evil people is straight ahead. But in the meantime, let's talk about something way better than any of these folks, and that's Fast Growing Trees. Did you know that Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and more than 2 million happy customers? Well, that's because Fast Growing Trees offers a wide selection of plants, from fruit and privacy trees to shrubs, all tailored for your climate and your space. Plus, they've got easy ordering online, quick delivery, expert support, including landscaping advice, and their Alive and Thrive guarantee, which means in the very rare likelihood that your plant or bush doesn't arrive in good shape, they'll make it right. They'll send you a new one, no problems. Their customer service is first rate. And so the Columbus family, as I've said many times, we've had the big leafy plants, the fig, the monstera, we've had the spice plants, basil, basil, the oregano, the lemon plant. I mean, it's just been fantastic all the way around. So this spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms do apply. Fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. All right, Andy, on to more crazy obsession here. Let's go to CNN, which had the poor wisdom to interview Taylor Lorenz about anything, the former Washington Post columnist. But she's apparently had this online fascination and adulation for Luigi Mangione, who, of course, is the cold-blooded killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last year in broad daylight, Midtown Manhattan. And CNN not only was more than happy to get her fawning perspective, as you'll hear, they're even giggling about the fact that there's this fascination with Mangione. This extended clip, it's about a minute and a half, but you got to hear it to believe it.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and the angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels. And you see that in moments like this. And I can tell you, I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen, because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel.
The women who gather outside court in New York.
So you're going to see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
Yeah, I just realized women will literally date an assassin before they swipe right on me. That's where we are. I'm sure you wouldn't like to be compared to a Trump supporter, but some of how people cannot understand why people have sympathies for Mangione strikes me as the same as a lot of media not understanding why people support Trump.
I totally agree.
It's because a lot of people are just really, really desperate.
They want somebody to take on the system. They want somebody to tear down these barbaric establishment institutions.
This is mentally ill on many levels. The giggling, the idea that Luigi Mangione is a morally good man. I mean, this is appalling on so many levels, and CNN just sitting there nodding along without any pushback is just absolutely disgusting, Andy. So what do you make of this being mainstreamed at this point?
Remember the end of Planet of the Apes when Charlton Heston is on the beach and he sees like the last vestige of the Statue of Liberty, that the upper part of it rising out of the sand, and he realizes at that moment that civilization just destroyed itself, and he's pounding on the sand saying he can't believe they did it. I think centuries from now someone's going to be looking at that clip and thinking the same exact thing. That's like the moment in time where you just knew that this civilization was
doomed.
Doomed is the right word. I have to say this is an old-time thing, right? There's a left-wing fascination with political violence. I don't think there's a similar phenomenon on the right. There is a phenomenon of cult on the right and progressivism, but not political violence. That's a dysfunction that the left can claim for its own. But it does have it. We still see a lot of these organizations, partisan organizations, and related partisan organizations, festooned with Che Guevara portraits and people wearing Che Guevara shirts. I remember Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, when he was accused and ultimately convicted of that atrocity, there was a similar fascination with him for a time, like comparisons between. It was hard to tell whether it was him or what was that old? Was it was it Rolling Stone that ran the
Rolling Stone
the
put him on the
famous
cover,
and it was very similar to the famous cover that they had done of Jim Morrison. That it was eerily similar to those of us who were old, Doors fans and back from that Stone Age century that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. But this is a thing that has gone on for a long time, and the left has a political violence problem because I think they believe on a certain, it's not just a gut level, there's kind of an intellectual case for it, that these are the really, truly authentic revolutionaries who are willing to put it all on the line. And it's just a fact that when you get one of these lunatics who happens to be a strapping, good-looking young man, as opposed to, Bill Ayers, they end up swooning over him. Hopefully, it's just a small amount of people, and we give it more attention than it's worth because it's so crazy. I mean, I must say, I looked at that clip. I hadn't seen the clip before, but I looked at it when you played it, and I was fascinated by it. So you can understand why people watch this stuff. But it's a sick fascination. You have to hope that there aren't too many people who are seized by it. But at the same time, when you say stuff like that, I remember throughout the early part of the century, when people would make an argument like it's only a small amount of people, I'd say, well, it only took 19 people to take us to war after 9/11. Radicals, part of the reason that they punch way above their weight is they continuously defy our understanding of what the bottom is and what the full extent of barbarity that people are willing to engage in is. And, look, there's a reason why the Bolsheviks only had 5% of support in 1917, and yet not only won, but essentially ruled the Soviet Union for 80 years. If you have a small but committed and disciplined group of people who are like-minded and willing to defy everybody's understanding of what the bottom is and what the extent of brutality that you're willing to engage in is, you can get a very long way.
Andy, a lot of violence we talked about today, unfortunately. Hopefully we have better fare as the week progresses, but we always appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and let's just remember that we're just shackled, Greg, and we just have to give up the chains that bind humanity, and that can only be done by revolution.
Good insights as always. Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He is also a contributing editor at National Review Online. He's a Fox News contributor and the author of many terrific books, including Ball of Collusion. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow all three of us on X. Andy is at Andrew C. McCarthy. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Monday. Join Andy and me again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.